Welcome to Sketchbook Legends. I'm your artist, Paul Hostetler, and today we are drawing the He-Man, Masters of the Universe, villain, Skeletor. As usual, I'm going to be starting with some rough pencils. Now, I saw a post on Reddit the other day about someone who was having trouble, with their anatomy. They subscribed to the draw a circle for the head and fill in the body parts with cylinders school of anatomy, which I don't know, never worked for me. I like to make a rough skeleton first, of the bones. Just a gestural drawing, and sort it all out from there. I find that anatomy is sort of too squishy on humans, and really any other mammal or bird or whatever. Shapes change too much from one pose to another to really be able to get any useful information out of just a cylinder. Apparently some people still use that system, though. I don't know if they get anything out of it. Maybe their artwork is a lot tighter and more anatomically precise than mine is. You can see how I'm just sort of gesturing my way through, feeling my way out, and that comes with a whole lot of experience. And even then, I sometimes make mistakes. But anatomy is important for characters like Skeletor, because despite having the name Skeletor and a skull for a head, he has a very muscular body otherwise, as does every single character in the He-Man universe, except for the women. For whatever reason, they're all shaped like Barbie dolls. I'm just a little bit too young to have been properly affected by the first waves of the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe franchise writ large, but I did get to play with some of the toys secondhand, and even back then I generally thought that these were cheap crap. Never watched the TV show either. So I don't have a lot of nostalgia for He-Man or Skeletor, which seems like a good thing now, since I've learned that the entire He-Man phenomena was engineered from the top down by toy manufacturers to be an addictive capitalist spectacle. I believe the line they used is, "We will cram He-Man into their tiny pea brains." I'm paraphrasing, but that's how little respect they had for their audience and their primary consumers. Don't expect me to have any amount of respect for them in return. The He-Man franchise has been going on at this point for, 40 years now? It's been rebooted something like 8 or 9 times. It's destined as a toy franchise to eat itself over and over and over again and then crap out the same intellectual property minus some amount of vital nutrient, much like Rainbow Bright, until literally no one on Earth is left who is capable of enjoying it. We're rapidly coming up on that soon. In another, I'd say 30 years, no one will give a hoot about He-Man, just in time for it to exit Mattel's ownership and join the rest of his pulp brethren in the public domain. And given, my lack of respect for the character, why am I doing this? Because I've seen the memes. I've seen the YouTube clips of Skeletor doing his little hee stupid laugh. And just as a villain type, sort of something that a board executive would come up with in between playing golf and smoking a cigar in his office. He'd be like, villain, skeleton man, named Skeletor. I think that's kind of funny. I can't remember exactly what his costume looks like. I know that it's basically the same costume that He-Man has, plus the skeleton head. The character's been rebooted enough, in enough different forms, in enough different media, that I feel I have the right to mess with his costume just a little bit myself. He-Man and Skeletor were invented in the way early 80s, right around the time of Ronald Reagan's ascendancy to president. And right around the time that he eased up on the restrictions for children's television, which made He-Man possible. See, before Reagan, TV aimed at kids had to ostensibly have some sort of educational content. If you've ever heard the phrase, a very special episode, it meant that the writers wrote themselves a preachy episode about the dangers of alcohol or underage sex or marijuana to fulfill their legal broadcast requirements. There were other rules about advertising directly to kids. Basically, you couldn't, since it was understood that kids don't have the experience to tell between educational content and narrative storytelling and a direct call to action, which is what advertising is. The advertisers want you to go and do the thing and spend money on their product. Kids don't know that they have the option to not do that. And now we know better. Adults can't tell the difference either. Once Reagan and his cronies dropped those sorts of rules, advertisers, toy manufacturers, all these, money makers wet their pants. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was the resulting product, along with properties and IP, because that's what they are. They're not really creative projects, they're IP, they're property. You had Strawberry Shortcake and G.I. Joe and Teddy Ruxpin and the Transformers. These were cartoon shows created more or less solely to sell toys by toy companies. The toys came first, the cartoon was whipped up to sell it, and in between segments of cartoon, there would also be advertisements for more toys. He-Man was focus group designed by Mattel. They wanted a line of boy toys to match Barbie. And through surveys and play tests, they found that boys surprisingly liked words like man and power, and they also liked skulls and swords and stuff like that. So they came up with a guy whose name was He-Man, and whose catchphrase was, "I have the power," and he lived in Castle Grayskull, and his enemy was a man with a skull for a head named Skeletor. Very imaginative. And the look of this dude and his enemy and all of his allies was so generic that most of them could just swap parts, which meant that Mattel only had to make like 3 different pairs of arms to go with like 400 different toys. To add to the goofiness, I've decided, I'm just going to put skulls over everything. He's got sort of a Roman leather skirt. I'm not sure what that's for. I don't even know why the Greeks and Romans had those flappy little strap skirts. Did they provide any sort of protection? Or were they just cute? I'm betting on the latter. Very fashionable, very feminine. That's how we like our Skeletors. And bedecked with skulls. And here I'm drawing Skeletor's famous skull-headed staff. Not a human skull. I do remember that Skeletor had a goat skull staff. So it's going to be interesting for me to not remember at all what a goat's skeleton looks like and to just make something ridiculous and goat skull shaped. Maybe I'll even put ears on the goat skull, like those stupid Halloween decorations. Now's as good a time as any to remind you that if you like what you're seeing, to click the subscribe button. That sort of thing really helps the channel. But I did enjoy the challenge here of trying to portray the spiral that you get with ram horns. It's not easy, but the effect is very cool. You can use the same effect to do any sort of spiral thing. Snails, staircases. Oh no, a mistake. Whatever will I do? Let this beloved children's television character. Will the fans forgive me? I hope not. There are a couple of in-lore origins for Skeletor. Originally, all these toys came packaged with comic books. In the comic book story, he came from another dimension, a dimension of monsters and skeletons, and he needed to open a portal back to that dimension in order to take over the peaceful land of Eternia. Allegedly peaceful because it was also filled with nude men wielding swords and giant tigers and guys covered in armor who had spring-loaded machine guns and such. All of those sort of cool spring-loaded toys got banned while I was still a kid. Once stupider children started shooting them down their own throats and into their eyeballs. This is why we can't have nice things anymore. After the comic books, which kids who liked He-Man were not the kind of kids who read deeply, they made a cartoon show, a Filmation cartoon show. It aired around 3 years later, and debuting in 1983. That's where the Skeletor that everybody knows and loves comes from, including his stupid laugh. That comes directly from voice actor Alan Oppenheimer. In the show, he's a largely toothless villain who runs away at the end of every episode. Perfect for syndication. You can just do reruns forever with that sort of plot structure. In the show, Skeletor is allegedly royal blood, probably like the uncle of He-Man. But he had some sort of magical accident that turned him blue or turned his face into a skull. And now Skeletor wants to break into Castle Grayskull to find all the doodads that will allow him to take over the world of Eternia and possibly the entire universe, but not to put, skin back on his face or dye him a more natural color. The show was canceled before any of Skeletor's actual backstory could be revealed, but that's okay. They still sold a lot of toys. Irritatingly, Mattel refused to continue molding older rounds of toys as new characters were introduced. So children in 1984 and 1985 watching the cartoon show would only have been able to play with the second-hand Skeletors. The first wave of toys introduced in 1981, where they introduced Skeletor, they just stopped making him. The main villain of the show, main character, you couldn't buy him for most of the time that the show was running. Seems like a stupid mistake on my side, but what do I know? I'm not the big brain that makes all these addictive children's shows. I'm the little brain that makes YouTube videos. Which one is better for society, you tell me. In 1987, there was a live-action movie version of Masters of the Universe because there was still a little bit of money to be squeezed out of the franchise, in which Frank Langella, beloved character actor, plays Skeletor from under an inch of latex. Apparently, Langella knew nothing about the character, but he was urged to take the role because he wanted a movie that his kids would enjoy watching. He asked them about the character. He was like, oh, that seems pretty easy, I guess. And apparently he enjoyed filming it. It's a very scenery-chewing role. He gets to make a lot of bombastic, villainous speeches. There were a few more cartoons after that. Each one roughly 10 years after the last one. Each one reboots the franchise for a new generation to middling success. So we've had like 7 or 8 different versions of Skeletor. Some are more menacing and scary, some are stupider. I think one of the latest ones was written by Kevin Smith of Mallrats and Clerks fame. That was on Netflix. And it was one of those things where I couldn't tell if it got bad reviews because it was legitimately terrible, or if it got bad reviews because people didn't like how central the female characters were to the plot. They thought there was too much of the ladies and not enough He-Man, and that made them angry. And can you tell that everyone watching that cartoon show was like 35 years old and was trying to recapture some of the magic of watching it as a 5-year-old in 1984. Can you tell? And now we're in the year 2026, and there's a new live-action He-Man and the Masters of the Universe movie, and this time Skeletor is played by, of all people, Jared Leto. I don't care enough to look it up. As far as I can tell, no one actually likes this guy, and whenever he stars in a movie, it loses money. However, apparently he has some sort of production company that makes casting him a financially sound decision regardless. And to be fair, the Skeletor that appears in the trailers seems to be 100% made out of computer graphics, so it's completely impossible that with an electronically modulated voice and little to no actual screen time, Jared Leto's aura of suckiness won't harm the box office of the Masters of the Universe 2026 movie. It would be a tragedy if that were to happen. I don't think the Western economy could take such a blow. I have no idea who would actually go and see that movie, though. It seems like most of the 80s reboots, like the Transformers reboots, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle reboots, it's aimed directly at people who are children in the 80s and 90s and not people who are children right now. I mean, children today have their pick of CGI spectacles. They can see a K-pop Demon Hunter or a Minecraft movie or a Zootopia. There's no dearth of cool, brightly colored stuff to bring your kid to. If it weren't for the brain-damaged parents buying tickets, I doubt anyone under the age of 12 would think twice about He-Man. Kids today have their own things that they're interested in, and it's not He-Man, it's not Skeletor, it's stuff like Skibbity Toilet, Digital Circus, Dogman. And just to make this fun for myself, I've got Skeletor with the little word balloon. Not going to put any words in his mouth, but since he's bedecked in skulls right up to his little noggin, I thought I'd give him a little skull word balloon. Sometimes in comics they use these to show that a character has died. I'm using it to show that a character is made mostly of skulls. What's Skeletor thinking about? Skulls. What's he all about thematically? Skulls. Gonna put a little extra shading on the Skeletor here. Make him look cool and dark and moody for the grim dark fanboys. Anyway, there you go, Skeletor. He looks like the cover of a Meatloaf album. And that's pretty much all you can say about him. Remember to click the like button to subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon to be notified when new videos are up. You can see these videos early if you subscribe to my Patreon. If you'd like to purchase any of the designs you see on this channel, you can head over to my TeePublic page. You can get t-shirts, prints, mugs, pins, etc. And you can find me on social media. My handle everywhere, from Patreon to TeePublic to Blue Sky, is phostetlerart. Until next time, stay sketching, stay legendary, and have a nice day.